Actually, on that specific subject, and it goes to that question when we were talking about prior art, and the issue of when do you do prior art. Once you have that inspiration, you ought to do the prior art. As Thomas Edison said, invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And your first sweat ought to be finding out what else was going on in your idea. And then once you've done a little bit of that, making a prototype of some variety, whatever it is, you make that and see if your inspiration will actually have some usefulness. Because after all, recognize that you can't get an invention unless it is novel, but you can't make any money unless it is useful. And then once you've done a little bit of that stuff, then I like to kind of go down to the business side. So I was introduced and said I had 43 patents at Dow Corning, and 32 of them made money, and I've had 3 since then as well, and 2 of those are making money. But we are all in the game of making money. We are not a foundation who gives money away. So one of the things I like to talk about is the 5 questions of business. Whatever you're messing around with, it's features, which beget benefits. What is the value of those benefits? What volume can you have? And how long does it take you to get to market? So features, benefits, value, volume, time to market. Those will beget a lot of questions beyond that, especially if you're trying to talk to who you think your market is, who's going to buy this stuff. You may do that introspection yourself initially, but then you're going to ask those same 5 questions of your market, your target market. And the bottom line, at least in my view, the features are the kind of the technical thing that you're messing around with. Those features provide particular benefits. Those benefits, you don't sell features, you only sell benefits. Those benefits have to have a value. If it costs more money to make those benefits than it does to what you will receive for those benefits, obviously they call those loss leaders at the grocery store. But you don't want to make losses. So features, benefits, the value, then the volume. If you're gonna sell something and you're only going to sell one of them, it better be really valuable. But if you're going to sell 1 million of them, well, then the value, the volume and value, that's total sales. That's what you're interested in. So all of those first 4 you might get really excited about, but if it takes you 25 years to get to the marketplace, the time value of money that you spend in year 1, what was the price of a hamburger 25 years ago versus the price of a hamburger today? The time value of money is really important. And the sooner you get to the market, the quicker you're going to be making a few bucks and paying yourself back. So those are, invention is really fun, but remember that 99% is where the work is.
And we want this to be a true discussion, but I just want to make a few remarks as well as we start here. Let's kind of pile on to what's already being said before. The prior art search, understanding what your invention is, what you have with respect to everybody else is absolutely critical. And I don't know how many people I've had to break their hearts when they have a really great invention And you just do a quick look into the art and say, oh, well, somebody else has been doing this for a long time. You'd never want to be in that situation. I had 20 years at Dow. When I retired out of Dow, I was intellectual capital manager for core R&D. So a whole lot of inventions came across my desk to figure out what to do with them. But I think that the single largest impact I had in my career in Dow was trying to change the culture with respect to IP, is putting that at the beginning of your project. What IP do we expect from this? What can we get from this? How can we protect it for the long term to create value? You really don't want to look at patents or other forms of intellectual property protection as an afterthought of your invention. It's got to be right at the forefront of the thoughts of your invention when you're working on whatever it is you're doing. And this could be anywhere from a restaurant where your invention is your recipes to actual physical devices. And most people in this room, it's going to be more on the physical device side. Or it could be software. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to understand how it fits in with everything else that's already out there, where you are unique, so where it's patentable. And even if it's not patentable, it still may be very valuable, because there are other ways to protect your invention. There's trade secrets, there's confidential information, and sometimes you might want to just disclose the heck out of your invention so no one else can patent it if you're the best at producing it at the lowest cost. So patents aren't always the answer, but they're definitely probably the most common form of protection. The other thing I want you to do when you're planning your company is assume success. Assume you're going to be successful. And if you're successful, you're going to be assaulted. Your competitors are going to try to come in around you or right on top of you if they think they can. Your customers are going to try to extract value out of you as well. Assume you're going to be successful. Like you said, when you look at your invention, if that little nub is that round button's the only thing that's creating your patent value, your patent really isn't valuable. I mean, that's a lot of ways to get around it. Like I said, with the triangle, with other shapes, you have to be very careful with anything that you file. But assume success, and if you assume success, layer your protection. The company that I'm working with right now the most, I just started helping with their IP. I kind of got sucked in a little more and more. I'm now CTO, still the IP director, but CTO until 3 weeks ago when we closed our first round of financing. I was chairman of the board. For that company, it's a new composition of matter. One of the biggest value creators we have for that company is the IP and how it's protected. And I have it protected with 4 layers of patent protection. You knock out any one of those 4 and we're still okay. You knock out 2, we're okay. You knock out 3, we're okay. I'm assuming we're going to be successful. I took the time right up front to layer the protection so that it would be very difficult for a competitor to come in and try to do exactly what we're doing. Let's see, the other thing, anytime you're getting a patent or other form of intellectual property, you really have to understand, you're asking the question, when do you file? Well, one of the first questions you have to ask after you have your invention is, what am I trying to do with this patent? How am I trying to create value? The whole idea of a patent from the inventor side is to create value. Sometimes you're creating value for investors who just want to see patent numbers and they're just clicking it off. The title of your invention in that case is probably going to be one of the most valuable parts of the whole patent. If you're trying to keep competitors out, then it gets to the claim set. The claims are most valuable. If you're trying to teach people through the patent to get something you're trying to change an industry in a certain direction, it's going to be the description. If you're just looking for marketing, the fact that you have a patent number at all is very valuable. And the patent itself can be so narrow that it really doesn't create much of anything other than the marketing value. But the number one thing I want to make you aware of with a patent, anytime you're filing a patent, is do not destroy value. Most patents, unfortunately, destroy value. They cost more than the value that they create. You have to be very, very careful. I evaluated a patent for a company a couple of years ago. I evaluated it for the investors. It was a pool chemical company. They had a very unique mixture of pool chemicals in order to protect a swimming pool that was chlorine-free. Very nice technology, very well done. All they claimed was the way to make one of the ingredients in the total set of chemicals that they taught. They actually destroyed value with their patent. Patent had negative value because it taught the whole world the proper way to treat the pool, and all they did was claim one small way of making one of the chemicals that went in there, and it wasn't even the most cost-effective way of doing it. That's not a good patent. Don't do things like that. Make sure that you understand how you are getting value from your patent right at the get-go, and that you're covering it. And there may be multiple ways you're going to get value from it. And you may want a patent that, a narrow patent is usually very quick to get. If you need patent numbers, you do narrow patents. Usually you're looking at trying to make things as cost effectively as possible. And for a startup, that often means you're going to throw a whole bunch of patents actually into your first filing. And know darn well that the patent office is going to say, wait, you have multiple inventions here. Break them up, pick one to go with. But you save money by having a single filing right up front. But you are planning out which of these patents you actually want to pursue and in which order right from the get-go. So you're preserving your cash as you're protecting yourself over time. And the last thing I wanted to say is work with your attorney. When do you work with an attorney? When you think you're actually going to file? I actually would not recommend filing a provisional on your own. If you think you have a good provisional, work with an attorney at that point before filing it. It's going to save you money in the long run. For them to clean up what we do is a lot cheaper than paying them right up front.
So you're saying don't try to do it yourself and then go to your attorney?
Well, I'm saying try to get as far down the path as you can on your own and then go to the attorney.
Okay. So you can give him that information.
Yes.
It'll save him time.
Yes, it'll save him time. And what I really spend a lot of time on, we'll talk about the value of the claims. If you think you're going to be protecting you spend the time on where you think you're going to get the value. Usually it is the claims. So spend a lot of time on thinking about how you want to set up your claims, and think about if you take off your own company hat and put on a competitor's hat. How do I get around this? Okay, I see what I've written here and how I claim this. Well, what would I do if I was a competitor trying to get around this and it was really good? In the case of your round button, square button. I mean, usually you get kind of tunnel vision and you think of your solution, which is pretty good. You usually be pretty good. You get that tunnel vision and claim exactly that. And as soon as you step back and look, say, oh, wait a second, I left big, wide open areas around here.
So what's the order would you do? Search, PPA, then what goes first?
I would always do a search first.
What's a
and do a Google search first. Not even a patent search, but look to see if somebody's already selling it.
Okay. If they're selling it in another foreign country but not in the United States.
But you're not going to get a patent on it. But if someone is selling in a foreign country, you can look at what they're doing and how they're doing things and use that information to improve your product you're going to sell here. As long as there's no patent, then you look at the patent literature. Make sure that you do have the ability, at least you do have the ability to operate.
Anywhere in the world is okay.
Recognize that a patent isn't necessarily the best form of protection of your intellectual property. A patent is useful only if whatever you're making could be reverse engineered. If it is relatively easy to figure out by cutting it open or putting instruments on it or what have you to figure out the essence of your invention, then you need a patent. But Coca-Cola, I think it's one of probably the most famous trade secret there is. Not perhaps this one, but the original formulation of Coca-Cola has never been patented. It is a trade secret, and ostensibly, I've read. I don't know if this is true. Maybe you guys know this, but there is only 2 people in Coca-Cola who have access to the real formula. Everything else is made elsewhere, like the syrup and what have you. So the point is it's a trade secret and they have maintained that trade secret. Some people will claim that Pepsi-Cola, nowhere near a Coke, just nowhere near a Coke. RC Cola, oh no. So Coca-Cola has a trade secret. So the question is whether you can maintain that trade secret. And what it really means is it's really secret.
Dave, actually, I'm going to correct you on one point of this. The original formulation for Coca-Cola was patented. And they
The one that
realized
had cocaine in it, you
And
mean?
they realized that they taught that the whole world now knew it was in the formulation, and they reformulated with a trade secret,
Right,
and specifically avoided patenting on the formula on the flavor that you have now.
Yeah.
But the original one was patented. They realized, hey, this is a really bad idea for this particular application. Went back, reformulated, and didn't patent.
What are the problems with trade secrets, though? What do you see issues with it? I'm sure in your work, for example, former employees going somewhere else, has that been a problem or issue that you've encountered?
Well, trade secrets mean that they are secret. And so, for instance, when I retired from Dow Corning, I had to sign a piece of paper that said I wasn't going to disclose any technology or information or trade secrets. And if Dow Corning, let's say I disclosed, I mean I wouldn't, but let's say I disclosed, Dow Corning then has to protect that. They have to sue you, sue me personally, and sue the company to whom I've disclosed it, because they then are using that technology someplace. So secrecy means truly secret, but it is more and more difficult to protect it in this environment with Google and with all sorts of ways of getting information. You know, maybe the NSA knows everything, right? Perhaps they, I won't get.
They're not into our paper files yet, I don't think.
Yeah, so trade secrets are difficult to protect, but that is another route, depending upon how you do it. But the next most important route, if you're going to go down the trade secret line, it is you got to be into the marketplace in a big way with proper marketing, sales. You know, really drive that forward, because how many people say when they're going to go to get a photocopy of whatever, they say, I'm going to go Xerox this. Well, they had a trade name called Xerox. It's really not. It really means photocopy. You're not going to go Canon it, right? You know, Canon was a competitor. They say you're going to go Xerox it, or you're going to use a Kleenex. I'm going to go get a Kleenex. Well, this isn't a Kleenex, but you know, go get a Kleenex. Well, no, that's facial tissue. So the point is that if you are going to do the trade secret game, you need to enter the market, expand the market, maintain a not only your secrecy but special names like Kleenex or Xerox, a trade name, properly recorded, properly registered. And somebody mentioned earlier about iTunes. The reason they're so excited about that is because of copyright law. So those things are very important.
Oh, the names were actually more trademark and service mark, and those are another valuable way to protect yourself. Aspirin was actually a trademark. It was a trademark of Bayer, and they lost it because nobody else likes to see acetylsalicylic acid. It's a lot easier to say aspirin.
Ted?
One of the, I think up front you were saying strategy, connection with trademarking. I think when you even think about your basic business strategy, patents should drive that or can drive that. Those two gentlemen and myself are working with a company, and the value of that company is almost entirely wrapped up in its IP. They aren't going to make their money producing widgets. They aren't going to make their money marketing anything. They're going to make their money by selling their IP to someone else that probably will do a better job of making that widget than they ever could. So a big part of, as you're thinking through your patent strategy, is make sure that that's consistent, and in a lot of cases will even drive your business strategy.
Now, the business strategy and IP strategy go completely hand in hand. Like the business that Ted's referring to, they have some pretty strong patents. They have other patents that are going to be a little more difficult to get through that are in the process, and we have to make a wise decision. Okay, do you want the narrow claims you get now, do you want to keep fighting for the bigger claims? But they also have a lot of trade secrets. They have a lot of know-how. They have a lot of actually significant trademarks. So it's a whole package that you're selling. And actually, when you're selling that kind of information, you're selling the know-how. The question is, how do you document and protect the know-how that you're selling? In their case, it's a way to make a better battery. The company who's going to be buying that technology really wants to make the better battery. They need to know how to do that. It's the knowledge behind it that's being sold. The IP protection strategies is just how you capture that. And actually, get back to one of the points on trade secrets, kind of capitalize what you mentioned earlier. What exactly is a trade secret and is not is defined in law, but that law is a little more nebulous and it's a lot more, seems to be defined by case history. What I recommend for everyone to do in all companies that I work with, we do this, is we set up a trade secret log. It doesn't have to be real complicated, but you record the general idea of what it is, who specifically knows about it, how you're protecting it, when it went into production, and what kind of value it's creating. So you have it. So you're basically documenting the minimum requirements for trade secrets, that you are following that. And that also makes a real good document for anyone who's leaving the company, like Dean when he signs out of the company. Okay, here are the trade secrets that you're responsible for, that you've been exposed to, that you do not let out of the company. And it also sets up a tracking system within the company is, okay, this is information that we keep tighter to the vest. This is even more than our just confidential information. It's truly on a more need-to-know basis. And it's better protected information than just regular confidential company information.
I think that's a great point. It's very helpful, definitely.
One other thing that hasn't been talked about yet, I'm assuming that everybody who is in here who's interested in patents is interested in building a business of some variety. Is that correct? and under that circumstance, perhaps you'd like to get rich and famous, or at least rich. The question is how do you get rich? Now, recently I was providing some counsel to a young man. I won't describe the mechanical device that he was doing because I'm under secrecy agreement. But where I'm going here is that I explained to him the 5 questions of business and how the patents work, how important the provisionals are, and so on and so forth. And he was interested in getting angel investing. I think everybody in here must know what angel investing is. Can I assume that? Okay. So he was interested in getting angel investing, and I says, "Well, that's really great. That's a wise thing to do. How much of the company are you willing to give up?" Oh, and he described how he give up, but he wanted to maintain control. So his goal was to have roughly 60% of the company. He would give up over time 40% of the company. I said, okay, that's great. That's not bad. Okay, now, who are the people that you are going to sell your company to so that we investors can get our money back, plus, a factor of 10 more? Oh, I don't ever want to sell a company. What do you mean you don't ever want to sell a company? Well, I just want to grow this company, get bigger and bigger. I says, well, if you don't ever want to sell a company, you are never going to get an investor. Well, I'll give them dividends. People aren't interested in dividends. They can get dividends at a bank. And a whole lot more guaranteed. So when you all are thinking about your inventions, about your business, do not marry your business. Marry your spouse. Do not marry your business. Because that business must be sold to somebody so that the investors can get their money out. If they get their money out, they would put money in after due diligence and the value of the patents and so on and so forth. But they'll put money in. When that young man, I still worked with him for a little while, and then I revisited that concept of an exit. He said, "No, I don't want to exit." I says, "Okay, I'm done. I am no longer going to consult with you. I am not going to bring this forward to the Blue Water Angels. because you are not being fair to your investors. Thanks very much. See you later. So think about that. Yes.
What's a reasonable exit strategy time frame? 1, 3, 5 years? What's your, I mean, to entice and I've not used an investor prior. 2 of my ideas might entertain the idea of needing that. We have no problem departing in a reasonable, sure it's gone.
Somewhere between 3 and 7 is kind of typical.
Okay.
If it's too long, then it's that time value of money business. And if it's going to be long, maybe there's good reason. You know, like, let's say you're in a drug business. You know, we've got a couple of drug-oriented things in our angel group. Those could be longer, but then the payback, instead of being 3 or 5x, would have to be 10 or 20x, because it takes 10 years.
Well, one of the things you have to be very careful when you're looking for money, the money isn't the most important part of it. The most important part of it is who's behind that money. What do they bring to the table? What do they require of you? What you want is someone that will help you along, that has contacts, has wherewithal to help you be successful, so you're successful together. As soon as somebody says, well, I don't care where the money comes from, I'll take anybody's, it scares the heck out of me. That's really bad. You're marrying this whoever's giving you the money. Okay, short term, 3 to 5 year marriage.
Perfect.
With a really good divorce.
With a really good divorce. But you're joined at the hip with whoever's investing in you, and you have to be very careful who it is and what assets do they bring to the table other than money. And this company that I'm CTO of right now, I told the main investor at one point, what he's bringing isn't just the money that caused us to go with that particular investment instead of the other one, but it's his background. He started over 30 companies very successfully. That background, that knowing how to start up companies, was actually more valuable to us than the money. Now we're taking the money because we need the money to grow. He said, okay, well, how about if I don't give you the money? Well, no. We still need the money in order to grow and get us where we need it to go. But that money is very, very important. And you really have to figure you will lose control of your company. The question is to whom and when. And you want to lose control to someone that will help it, that will cause it to grow well, that will get you essentially so you have a smaller piece of the pie, but a much, much bigger pie. You want it to lose it to the people who can get you the bigger pie.
Dave, I have a question for you. How often do you find to be involved in an angel investor group that you are entertaining investing in the company when they don't have a working prototype? So let's talk about a mechanical device type product where I've got patent protection. I've spent the money on the patent attorney. I've used all the funds on the patent attorney to obtain the patent, but now I don't have enough money to obtain the prototype. Should I go seek some family members and try to get some money to create the prototype before I go to the angel investors? Is that important to the angel investors or not?
The answer of a working prototype and for that matter, perhaps some small sales are extraordinarily important to angel investors. If you expect somebody to give you a bunch of money just so you can make a prototype, just so you might be able to find something to work, you're not going to get it at angel invest. That's what family, friends, and fools are associated with. You got to get that money. In the business that Ted was talking about, the entrepreneur mortgaged his house, took money out of his 401k. This guy was committed, and he got family, friends, and fools to invest, and he then had a working prototype before he came to the Blue Water Angels. So for me, it's called due diligence. Part of that due diligence is, will it work? And I don't know anybody who's maybe Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Actually, neither one of them would give you money if you. They don't just throw it away, On the other hand, if you can solve malaria problem, Bill Gates will give you a lot of money. But if you want to make a new widget, I don't know anybody who's going to give any money unless it's family, friends, or fools to create that prototype to then have a working material. But all of that diligence you've done before, the, market search, features, benefit, value, volume, time to market, all that has to be done because that's part of the due diligence to have somebody open up their checkbook and write you a check. Each one maybe $10,000, let's say, and you've got 45 investors. That's $450,000, and maybe that's what you need, and you're giving away then 20% of the company to get that.
Now, there are funding sources around that you can look at as well. I mean, the typical is the Friends, Fools, Family, angels, VCs, and private equity or acquisition, something along that line for an exit. But small amounts. Look at the BAF. Work with people like MMIC right here in this room to help you find some of that initial capital to get going. And the grants are better because they don't take any equity. And another thing that works pretty well is enter some of these business competitions. And at Coveron, we had close to $300,000 total in business plan competition winnings. That's free money. That's not bad. There are a few strings attached for reporting back, but very, very little. And you don't have to follow the normal path. One of don't listen to Blue Water Angels in here. With Coveron, we didn't look to go to angel investors initially, actually, for our initial funding. We went right to VCs that will reach down and do pre-seed funding, thinking that the step from angels to VCs is difficult, so let's just avoid it altogether and go right to the VCs. So we did that. Venture capitalist. Or vulture capitalist, depending on your point of view.
Vulture.
But we went to the VCs first, and then when we were going for the A round, we thought we were going to go with the venture capitalists for that, and actually had a very good deal from them set up. But a private investor came in and said, "No, I want controlling interest in it, all to myself," and that worked out really well. And he actually came from Blue Water Angels. So you never know how this is going to play out. Be open, but also be very diligent about looking at what's available and what makes the most sense for your company at the time. There is a normal path, but there's a lot of reasons not to do normal.
But the most important thing you can have to get that money is an unfair competitive advantage. Now, why would anybody want to be unfair? You want to be able to dominate whatever you're trying to do. And you need to be able to articulate what your unfair competitive advantage is. If it's a fair competitive advantage, that means everybody's making photocopiers. And yours is pink rather than somebody else's is blue. But if you're really doing something new, like the iPhone, there is an unfair competitive advantage in terms of all of its features and benefits that allows people to make the iPhone work the way it does.
What's the difference between the Blue Water Angels and a venture capitalist?
Venture capitalists generally, sometimes they do startups, but generally they're bigger dollars and they go in for a big deal. So Blue Water Angels, our angel investing is small-time venture capital.
One of the things that, with respect to your intellectual property, that you have to be very careful of, as soon as you start talking to investors, you have to be able to communicate value to them. Most investors will not sign a confidentiality agreement. You never talk about the details of your invention without either having a patent filed, doesn't have to be granted, but at least filed, or you have a confidentiality agreement with whoever you're talking to. So what you have to be able to do with people, with inventors, at least the early stage investors will not sign a confidentiality agreement because they're talking to too many people. They can't keep all this stuff straight. Now, to get the point they're actually putting a lot of real money into, yes, they will sign it, but initially they won't. So you have to be able to give them an idea of the value you're creating and how you're going to protect that value. And what you don't tell them the final details, that really the secret sauce that makes it work, but you have to convey the message of, here's the problem we're solving, here's the value it's going to create, and I have this protected.
So how do you do that without a patent, without a confidential agreement at a competition?
Not much competition.
Right.
No, Well, it's kind of like what I said. You give the value that you're creating, and the specific one for, well, and the battery guys have won several competitions
Before they had a patent.
before they had a patent.
Provisional, so, or, you can get a provisional in there.
And at Code Run, we had provisionals in after we did about half the competitions. But we never talked about the exact formulation that we had. We never talked about our composition of matter. We never talked about the chemistry to get there. We talked about what the end product was, what it did, and why it was valuable to customers.
You talk
And
about those
that's what you
5
have to do.
questions.
Yeah, my product is super easy to figure out. You know,
Those could be the
I
best
mean-
ones.
Then you might want to have it protected. If it's super easy to figure out, you might get into the obviousness question that was
Yeah,
discussed
exactly.
earlier. So you have to be careful.
And that's what I've been
And-
told with patent searches is it's very obvious. Even though there's no competition for it.
Then you may not have a patent available to you. And your competitive advantage may be first to market, maybe low cost production, maybe a better design. And there are other non-patent ways to create value
Right.
with your intellectual property.
There is one little nuance you can play a little game on. Let's say that you actually anticipate that you won't get a patent. It may be valuable to pay these guys $500 an hour to put in a patent application, because in 1 year that will be published, and it will say on the top of it patent application, and then it'll look every bit like that one that issued. It'll look every bit like that, except it won't be issued. It won't have a patent date on it. It'll have a patent application on it. And then when you're talking to whoever you want to sell this stuff to, you put that down on the table and you say patent applied for.
For 20 years.
Patent pending.
I can use it even though.
Well, no.
Once you get a final rejection,
Yeah.
you're kind of done. But
One-
you can
yeah.
string it out. You can string it out. Oh, you can string it out for a lot
You
of
can string it
years.
out for 5-7 years.
How long can you guys string a patent out?
20?
Yeah.
20
Okay.
for
yeah.
an application that's never.
Well,
gone
the
through.
Does that
laser.
sort of prove that it's really not patentable. So.
That's what I'm referring to as a bit of marketing.
Right. Right. And so what I'm saying is I've applied for the patent, but in my mind, if somebody else came along and tried to patent it, they're not going to be able to patent it either.
Because it's disclosed.
Right.
That application is going to get published.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
And actually having a provisional filed, if you're looking at selling relatively soon, is really a good place to be in, because then you'll allow whoever the purchaser of your technology is to convert that provisional to conventional patent and put in what they see as valuable, as opposed to what you thought was valuable going in. Anytime you're selling something off, you're going to have a slight difference of opinion as to where the real value is. Anytime you're selling, you're going to have a difference of opinion as to what your value is. You always tend to think it's higher. Whoever's buying tends to think it's lower. Eventually, you have to come to agreement, which case the deal happens. But having pending applications that they can work off of, especially if you've contemplated quite a few things in there that they can do. I don't know if you talk about divisionals or continuations in part at all.
Generally, not really
Okay.
specifically. Sure, go ahead.
But you can plan into your patent divisionals and continuations in part of what you've already put in there. I was thinking, I was looking at a set of patents for another company. One original filing had 90 divisionals off it.
Oh, jeez.
90.
Well, wouldn't you guys like that?
I'm looking for 10. I'm looking for 10 more on that to see if they can hit 100. But
Wow.
they just kind of kept going and going and going.
Sure.
They must have deep pockets.
Absolutely.
They do.
Yes, sir.
Question. I'm working on 2 patents right now. And first, I'm a student. I'm at Northern University, the law school. So I've been working on this patent for about, under a year. And before I started to do my research, so I had the idea, started doing my research, and for one of them, I saw that it had been, much to my surprise, it had been, the idea had been put out there by one of the companies called Quirky, Q-U-I-R-K-Y. So the idea was already out there, And I thought, well, that's kind of a bummer. But once I did more information about patents, I saw that, well, there's a period of time once you disclose your invention that you have until you have to publish it or, file a patent. So that time has passed. It's been over 3 years since it's been published on this site. And people go to this site because they have these inventions or they have these ideas. They publish them and then people comment on them and then the company helps them to market the product. But to my knowledge and what I've looked up, and I was working with somebody, it hasn't been patented. So I was
It won't
curious-
ever be patented.
Don't step into somebody else's space unless you know that they're as long as their application is still running, don't step into their space.
I haven't
You
done
can go to
that.
the USPTO and
Yes.
fill up a file wrapper and see where they are in the process.
On the website it says in production, but
Well, I mean, for the patent, you don't want
it's
to.
not a patent. It's just for the creation of the product. It's just that the idea was put out there.
Okay. This is not a patent application. This is just a publication.
Exactly, and
They
I
published the idea.
Exactly. And
Okay, I'm
talked
sorry.
with- Yeah, and I talked with the professor, and basically what he was telling me, the real deal is with this company, what they're trying to do is see if there's a market for it, and once there is, then they will decide to patent it and then market it first. That's what it seems like.
It's such.
Okay,
Basically, that's what patent-
here's the question. They may have put this on Corky after they put in a provisional, let's say. Then they have 1 year to write in the utility patent, and that then becomes an application. And that application can take 5 years or whatever before it gets prosecuted to a U.S. patent. The question that in this due diligence research we were talking about before, if it's more than a year since that application was in, it has been published. And you should be able to find it. And if you can't find it, then perhaps they haven't, or you didn't ask an attorney to find it, if you're not that clever at it, then if you can't find it, then they don't have a patent application. Because if they put it into Corky, it gets published, and it's longer than a year that it's been published in Corky, without a patent application prior to that year, they're toast. They can't get a patent.
To my knowledge, the product hasn't been made.
It doesn't make any difference whether it's been made or not, but
The idea
question,
has- the idea.
they won't be able to get a patent. But you can take that information and build upon it and make it better, and then you could get a patent using their background. You put on your secret sauce to make it better, and then you could, but don't spend all that money paying these guys $500 an hour unless you can do those 5 questions that we were talking about earlier, and in which you can make some money.
Because my whole goal is not to necessarily make it myself. It would be to sell it. So if I get the provisional patent, to talk to a company and hope of selling it or working something out for them to sell it or manufacture it. But I was just shaking my head. Which kind of leads to my next question, but I guess I'll do it out there. With the provisional patent, is there opportunity, if I were to go to a company with a provisional patent, is there opportunity to sell it to them or work out something where they could just take it for a fee, or it could be for the value of the patent or what they see the worth of it is, or like a royalty fee or something like that?
Absolutely, but I'm going to tell you, it's very difficult to sell a patent if you don't have a business already going. If you don't already have a couple customers that the company who's buying can see, oh yes, there truly is value here. They almost never will buy a raw patent. There's some exceptions. There are always exceptions to every rule. But in general, you want to have a working business, small. It can be very small, and you want to have some customers. And this actually gets back to another point that I guess we never talked about. One of the things I always like to tell people: let your customers help design your product. They will tell you what's valuable in your product by what they're willing to put down money for. I mean, with a patent, you're trying to cast a pretty broad net over your invention. When it actually gets down to refining a product that you're selling, let your customers tell you what they really want. Don't presuppose a whole lot. You have to presuppose enough to get the value out there that you're making prototypes that you think people want to buy. But they will very quickly tell you exactly what it is they want.
You, just so you know, you can go to companies and do this. So the two classical representations of a garage shop going to a big company to sell their idea is intermittent wipers and the laser. The intermittent wiper was stolen by Ford from the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur then sued him. And it took something on the order of, because it was very valuable to Ford, they had some really high-class attorneys, and they strung this thing out, and they wanted to bankrupt that guy so that he would then capitulate and sell them, but he wouldn't. He did not capitulate.
Into a movie? What was that?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And
What?
Greg Kinnear.
Yeah.
and it's a great deal, but the guy went through 3 heart attacks or something like that. He won, and then Ford and everybody else in the whole bloody world had to give him, I don't know, $1 for every intermittent windshield wiper produced from the date that patent issued forward, not past.
There's a lot of
Forward. So they had, I don't know, maybe $1 billion. I don't know what it was, but the guy, I think he died about a year later, and so the point is, you can do that, but really good ideas are typically stolen.
Yeah.
So get your patent, start your business, get things rolling, and don't expect to be the one in 10 million. What was that patent number on that one today?
6 million.
Yeah, so the one in 6 million that they're gonna pay $1 billion for later after you litigate the heck out of it.
After you destroy your life,
Yeah.
litigating the heck out of it.
So do those 5 questions, get your provisionals, get your application in, get prototypes working, start selling the stuff, let your customers help you improve it. Remember, once you've got the patent application, you can keep all improvements as a trade secret. There are certain improvements in that battery application that are going to be trade secrets, but you can still protect it with that patent.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
I already have the prototypes. Somebody helped me out with them. So I have the prototypes. So my next biggest step, I've already started working on the application, but I'm having a hard time drawing. Personally, I can't draw. So
Get a 2-year-old.
I'm trying to see the best route, because I know there's a way. I've heard you take pictures. I was looking up ways. So I went to a website doing some research, and I found that if you take a picture of it, you can get a trace of that picture using some type of program. I heard of CAD and everything like that. But it's just, what's a good way to go about it for somebody in my position?
Let me just back up and ask you a quick question. Whoever's making your prototypes for you, did you have a confidentiality agreement with them? The proper answer is yes.
Well,
That's not the proper answer.
it was, yeah, true. It was interesting because he actually gave me an idea to go off of. And he said, well, since you're working with this, why not this? So he helped me create the prototype for it.
He's a co-inventor
He might be
then.
a co-inventor. Now, what you do as a co-inventor, then it's not an open disclosure because you guys are both inventors on this. See, the other thing you can do
Even
is,
if I came to him with the idea. For one of them,
Yes.
I came to him with the idea. He helped me with the prototype for that one. And then another one he mentioned, he helped me with the prototype.
okay.
And then, I'm sorry, I'm just bringing all this up.
Did you pay him? Does this work for hire?
See, that's where I was getting to. And I actually talked with somebody, and I talked with the lady, and she said, if anybody has helped you, and I was trying to see to what extent, and now I know the extent is that after the prototype, they will be a co-inventor. So the next step for me would be to offer that, or talk to that person and work for hire. Because his understanding was, the mutual understanding between us was that I came to him with this idea, and he gave me the other one to go off of. So this was 2 ideas that I was running with. But legality-wise, there's no proof of that. The work hire document that I found out about would sort of satisfy that.
Work for hire or confidentiality. Now, Dave and I are not attorneys. We don't play attorneys. So for real legal advice, ask these guys over here who have the actual degrees. But you get an NDA with a non-disclosure agreement, confidentiality agreement, predate it to before you start working. Or have a work for hire where you're paying him for it, so it is your work product, not his. Now the fact, if he materially contributed to any of the claims and your invention, he's the co-inventor. As a co-inventor, he has all the same rights to that patent as you do if you don't have any other agreements. So he can take that, you can build up a big business with his name on it, he can go out and sell to somebody else out from under you, or license it off to someone else, or produce it with another company that you have no control over. You never want to be in the situation where you have co-inventors who are not completely aligned in direction, strategy, everything. So you need an agreement with them of some sort.
So with the confidence, even though the data's passed since I've worked with them, well, not the data's passed, but I don't have any document the confidentiality of the work for hire, can I still ask him to sign that? And like you said, I can predate it.
You can ask him to sign it. What's the limits on predating?
Well, I wouldn't even predate it, I would just have him sign an agreement that says that he agrees that anything that he
Non-dated.
created is now your
Right.
property.
Okay.
So,
If he's an inventor, he's an inventor.
If he's an inventor, yeah, if he's right.
But whether or not he's an inventor or not is a very complicated question.
I have the idea, he helped me with the prototype.
You know, certainly a difference between invention and design. You can come to someone with the concept in your mind of
Yes.
A, B, C, and D, and that person may say, hey, but what about adding F to it? And F may be old, and it may be a nice little feature, but that doesn't mean that the invention is A, B, C, D, E, and F. And of course, it all goes down to what you claim, as Reed mentioned. If you materially contributed to the claim, and that claim happens to be a new feature of your invention, he probably needs to be named as an inventor. If you don't claim it, then he doesn't need to be named as an inventor. So it gets very complicated quickly. For future reference, Reed's absolutely right. You want to get something in place beforehand. If you're going to any vendor, whether it's someone just doing the drawings, but most importantly, someone doing the prototypes, you want to have that NDA to be very clear. Not only is it an NDA that this is a confidential disclosure, but also anything that you contribute to the invention, because invariably someone is going to say, you know what, you should do it this way. That's just the nature of engineers and people that are doing prototypes. And so your agreement needs to spell out very clearly, anything that you improve upon this is my property. But the situation you're in right now, I think there's ways you can protect yourself even after the fact. It's a buddy, if it's a friend, if it's someone like, hey, look, I'm not trying to do anything funny here. Just
That's the direction I got.
say, look, we're gonna form this agreement, and I'm gonna pay you for the work you did, and you're gonna assign all your rights to me, and
Exactly, that's my idea to pay him. So, it's just that conversation.
Perfect. But you need that agreement so you
Yes.
don't have a co-inventor
Yes,
that
you need it in writing.
don't have
yes.
control over.
As far as getting the drawings, you can take any prototype and just, look, we happen to have one ourselves, but we can scan it in, the actual image into CAD, and then you can use that to print out drawings that you can then use for applying. It's a whole lot cheaper and faster and more accurate.
That's not.
So if you have the product, I've got a store in the mall, you can bring it in, we'll scan it in and send you a file, and you can print them out and do whatever you want with it. We do it for a lot of companies.
So if that's the case, would I have to have an agreement with you like that?
I have one for you to sign, but you can bring your own, sure.
Okay. No, like an NDA.
Right, no, that
Oh.
says that it's yours, we have nothing to do with it, we scan, we give it to you.
It's work for hire.
We do it for Dow Corning, and a few smaller companies where we bring in products, and they bring in products, we scan them, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay. Because I just realized I need to get my house in order before I start really moving forward with it. And the biggest thing was, first was to see first if that one I did was already patented. And I haven't found it, but that could be because, hey, I'm not a patent. So.
You don't have to be a patent attorney these days. Google and Google
Somebody-
I
patents.
tried, and I still can't find it, but something's telling me I haven't exercised everything, so maybe going to an attorney would be best, just to, provide that,
Yeah,
surety.
no
A
doubt.
lot of attorneys don't do their own searching. They farm it out to searchers who are actually really, really good at it. Like I have subscriptions to some paid-for services for doing patent searching. It's a lot better than Google. But I got to admit, Google's getting a heck of a lot better than
They
it
sure
was.
are. Any questions from you folks? Okay, well, maybe it's worthwhile just to summarize up as we're getting here. You know, from my perspective as both an inventor and a business creator, you have the inspiration. That's really good. Once you do that inspiration, you really have to say, well, is it really an inspiration that's private to you and unique, or is it inspiration that's not so private to you and somebody else has already done it? So inspiration, search. Try to find out if it's been done before or operational. Search really hard, because there's no sense in working really hard on your new stuff to find out, after spending yourself thousands of dollars. You can work really hard on the Google system. Make a prototype. You've got an imagination on how it's going to work. Does it work that way? And then imagine who's going to use it. And then start formulating your 5 questions: features, benefit, value, volume, time to market. Provisional patent. Before you go out talking to anybody, you can, as I mentioned, you've already done the work, so the old is there. Your unfair competitive advantage, and how are you going to describe in what might be the first claim, which the first claim is always the broadest claim. You can have dependent claims and all that, but the first claim is always the broadest claim. So how would you write that? That's the substance of your provisional. Find a good attorney, get it applied for, and then start exercising your 5 questions by talking with your potential marketplace. And not just in Midland, Michigan, or Gladwin, or wherever. If this is really important, maybe you find out who does it locally, but then, maybe you need to go to Illinois or Nevada or whatever. You got to make sure that you can get a good understanding of those 5 questions more broadly than perhaps, your own little environment here. And then make more prototypes. Provide them for trial. These are called samples. Sometimes people are actually willing to pay for samples or pay for the first prototype. And then you got to figure out how to get some money now then to bring this forward. And all this other time up probably till now, you've had friends, family, and fools providing you money. You got a prototype working. You might have even sold a few. Then you might be coming to angel investors or a private individual who happens to be a long lost uncle who you really really like, or a long lost aunt, Melinda Gates. Who knows? So you can get some money, and ultimately though, to really move forward, you're probably going to need some more, and it can get into millions of dollars if you really have something worthwhile before you exit.
One other thing you didn't mention, potential funding source. Look at your customers. You can often do customer financing.
Oh.
If it's a product that they want, they will often prepay you to get the product in. Or even in the case of Coveron, we have a couple developmental contracts now, where the customer is actually paying us to develop a product specifically for their application space. And that's not a bad way to go.
That works out great. I consult
Not a bad way to go.
with a plastics compounder, and their main customer gave them $1 million up front to get more capacity for the extruder, and then as they sold product to them, they then worked off that $1 million by cutting it 20 cents a pound or something like that, and it takes a lot of pounds. It was wire and cable, so it was a lot of pounds. That's a good way to do it. That was a real nice check, which actually they left in the restaurant. They had to go back and get it. It was hilarious.
$1 million check.
It really did. It was a manila envelope. Well, it was still there.
$1 million here, $1 million there.
Yeah, well, pretty soon you get real money. Any other questions? Thanks for your time.
Yeah, Reed and Dave, thank you. Or go ahead. We really appreciate it. Thank you.